Today I'm behind the wheel of a brand new 2021 Hyundai Veloster N. Now the Veloster N is in the hot hatch segment, which is going through some changes right now. The Honda Civic Type R is being discontinued after 2021, and we won't know when it'll return. And the Golf R, which is currently discontinued, will come back as a 2022 model. So as you can see, there are changes. Now for 2021, Honda did refresh the Veloster N in a big way. There's now a brand new 8-speed dual clutch transmission. For those of you guys that don't like to bang your own gears, the engine and brakes have been updated, and also the infotainment system on the inside have been updated. So just how good is this brand new Veloster N? Well, keep watching and find out. All right, I'm behind the wheel, so let's see how good this brand new Veloster N is and see how it drives. First, let me talk about the changes, because there are significant changes to this brand new Veloster N. First and foremost is the performance package that used to be optional is now standard, and that adds a whole lot. It was a head scratch at first why it was optional in the first place, but Hyundai came to the senses and made it standard. First, the engine gets boosted more, 25 additional horsepower, so now standard Veloster N is producing 275 horsepower. Yeah, that's a good number, though it's still a little bit less than say the Civic Type R. And I'm gonna test out the acceleration a little bit, but 0 to 60 comes in around 4.8 seconds, especially with this brand new transmission, this 8-speed dual clutch transmission that is now optional. Now, so far, driving around town, it's pretty good, but when I really accelerate, I'll let you guys know if it's smooth or if it's clunky. Now, also, what is now standard are the brakes. They're bigger and better. Bigger rotors, bigger calipers, and of course, they give you better stopping power. That is also now standard. That used to be optional with this performance package. Another big thing is the electronic limited slip differential that you get with this package. That is also now standard. And the active exhaust note is now standard. Yes, you can change the exhaust note inside this Veloster N. Lastly, the big thing that was changed in this Veloster N is this infotainment system. The whole thing has been redesigned. The interface looks better, it's more responsive, it's smoother. As you can see, this package is pretty significant. There's a lot of things that was added to this package. All those are now standard within this Veloster N, so this is a pretty big, significant upgrade. Now, this Veloster N offers many driving modes. So there's a big blue button on the left bottom side of the steering wheel. If you press that, you can select between normal, sport, or eco. Those are pretty standard. However, if you want to maximize the driving experience, there's another button on the right side that's also blue that has a checkered flag, and I'm just gonna call that race mode. And that tunes up everything. That basically stiffens up the suspension, opens up the exhaust, gives you the maximum amount of horsepower. That is the mode that I want to test out. But right now I'm driving in comfort mode. I just want to see how this Veloster N is just daily driving. Okay, so I had an opportunity to accelerate a little bit, and that felt lively. Felt lively, but not as quick as I was expecting. I mentioned 0 to 60 about 4.8 seconds. You know, I'm gonna try that again. It could be because I'm in normal mode. I'm gonna try it in race mode and see how it is. But you know, decently quick. Of course, you got a very powerful engine under the hood. And you know what, this new 8-speed, isn't bad. It feels more or less like an automatic. I mean, that's how it's supposed to feel with dual clutches. It's pretty smooth, it downshifts when you should, but right now, just driving around in comfort mode, it's pretty civilized, relatively quiet, not a whole lot of wind noise, just slightly. I do hear a little bit more from the road, and I forgot to mention, part of the performance pack that became standard also gives you Pirelli summer tires. Yes, I'm driving summer tires right now in the dead of winter, so I'm watching out how I'm driving. The tires are a little bit louder, but overall still pretty quiet. I have the radio off, so isn't too bad. And of course, in normal mode, the exhaust gets toned down too. Also, you know what, I gotta say, visibility isn't half bad. I thought visibility would be horrible because when you're standing outside, the Veloster just looks like a very small little car. But inside, front windshield, decently big. Side window surprisingly bigger than I expected. I thought the door panels would be a little bit higher, but no. So visibility out the side pretty good. Blind spot surprisingly is also good. You know, the C-pillar is not nearly as thick as some of the other hatchbacks that you see on the road. And the rear window is actually decently big too. So Hyundai did a really good job with visibility with such a small car. Starting with the second row, and yes, there's only one door. In case you're not familiar, this is a 3-door setup. So to get in the second row, you have to go on the passenger side. You can't go from the driver's side. You won't be able to open the door. But from passenger side, once you open the door and you get in, you know what? I still have about 2 inches of legroom and about 2 inches of headroom. So again, I'm quite surprised by the space. I thought there will be none in the second row. Although I will say, compared to Civic Type R, Civic Type R definitely has a lot more room on the inside. The Civic in general is almost like a clown car in terms of how much space it has inside. It's definitely way, way, way bigger than you would ever expect. But inside this Veloster N, kind of that feeling, but not to that extent. And also up here too, you know, plenty of headroom, right? Shoulder room's okay, hip room is okay. So, you know, again, pretty surprising in terms of how much room is up here. Now, one thing that's so-so for me are these seats. The seats, first of all, look gorgeous. Very sporty seats. The N on the seat back, right? They actually light up at night. Very unique. And the overall design with the blue stripe down the middle, very, very nice. Now, the back bolsters, very aggressive, holding my back, and that's what you want. If you're taking corners, you want to be held in, right? But the bottom cushion, the thigh bolsters, a little bit too aggressive, so that, you know, my left thigh just seems to be like a little bit uncomfortable. It's sticking out a little bit. And I'm trying to think about the Civic Type R. The Civic Type R, it's even more bolstered, but I guess the way it's designed, it felt a little bit more comfortable to me. And it was covered in like a soft Alcantara kind of material, and I like that. I like that a little bit better, but this looks better, but I feel like this is a little bit more uncomfortable. But then again, I'm a big guy, so that could be why, right? My thighs are sticking out of these seats. But, you know, overall, I think the seats do a good job holding you in. Just a little bit too aggressive for me, but I think a lot of you guys will enjoy it. Ooh. There's so much power. There's so much power. I mean, anytime you accelerate, put your foot down, even halfway through, you know, you'll feel a sudden rush of power, and it's very, very enjoyable. Although, if it had the 6-speed in here, where you're shifting and banging your own gears, I think it would be a lot more enjoyable. And unfortunately, that's going away nowadays, right? All manufacturers are removing 6-speed. Because the newer generation just doesn't care, doesn't want to learn, right? But, you know, honestly, if you're driving a car that you want to have fun with, right? And not even just with racing, but just driving around, having a good time, you know, you got to go with a 6-speed manual. So hopefully Hyundai does not get rid of it altogether in the future. Next, let's talk about the outside, because I think this Veloster N has a really good, aggressive, bold look without being over the top like the Civic Type R. And that is the biggest complaint to the Type R, because half the people will say it's just too boy racer like, right? Too over the top, and I could never drive something like that. Where the Veloster N is not to that extreme, although it still looks very aggressive and bold on the outside. Especially right now with this red paint, it definitely pops out, right? But there's a lot of subtle trim pieces and some contrast that I think works really well. So starting from front end, you have a big black grille with a unique design, right? And I love how the front black splitter kind of just flows in. Everything flows in really well. It's not just like slapped on, right? It's all flowing nicely. Same thing with the headlights, right? They have a unique shape, especially with the LED daytime running lights. So the front end definitely has that aggressive look. The grille is big. big and upright, right? I like the front end. Now moving to the side profile, it definitely has that hatchback look, more of a traditional hatchback look with a big wing on top. It's low to the ground. And you know, honestly, from the outside, this car, the Veloster N, looks tiny. But that's why I'm surprised how much room is actually on the inside and how good the visibility is, right? But I like the look, and of course you have big 19-inch wheels standard. You know, the wheel gap is very small. Everything is very low to the ground. It has that good stance, and I really like it. Of course, with the upgraded brakes, you see the red caliper beneath that just pops out. The back looks pretty good too, especially with that wing on the top. You could definitely notice it, but it's not as obnoxious as the wing on the Type R, right? So everything's just tuned down slightly. But I like the look of it. And also, of course, you go down, right? You have two big exhaust tips. So as you can see, this Veloster N looks great on the outside. It has a good, sporty, hot hatch look without being too overbearing. And I think a lot of you guys will enjoy this over the Type R look. I'm gonna go into N standard, which is this race mode, right? I'm gonna see how it is. Right away, a lot of things changed. A lot of things changed. Steering stiffened up quite a bit. I was going to comment about how lackadaisy the steering felt, especially compared to Type R. Man, that made a huge difference. The steering now is really, really precise. There is basically there's no play in the steering wheel. Just any little input, I feel it with this Veloster N. So the steering improved quite a bit, and it has a really heavy feel now. Much more enjoyable with this steering. And by the way, everything in race mode can be configured too. You can select what you want to be the most aggressive and tune down other things. And this steering wheel overall, pretty nice. I mean, good bolstering, good thickness, the design is good. You have some blue stitching that matches the rest of the theme in here, like the blue seat belts, right? And the seats and everything else. So, I mean, the steering wheel is good. You have paddle shifters too, of course. Oh, you could hear that. There's so much more drone and more pop, right? Even the downshifts, you can hear the exhaust note. Definitely a different driving experience. All right, I'm going to a hard turn here. Ooh, oh, I gave it some gas, and man, that was fun. That was fun. See, this driving with everything turned on totally changed the experience. And I wanted to see the difference, and you can definitely notice it. So when you're driving normal mode, if you're just going to work, you know what, you just want a comfortable and normal drive, yeah, put it in normal. And if you want a really fun drive, oh man. I gotta be careful. I can't go overboard, but man, it's a very, very different feeling. So what are some other things you get standard with this Veloster N? Well, you get automatic climate control, so single zone, you do get that. You also get a couple USB ports, which is nice, and a 12V outlet in case you want to plug your things in. And you get a whole bunch of safety features. Okay, so automatic braking, emergency braking and warning, lane assist, blind spot monitoring, those are all standards. Now I'm just reflecting on this interior cabin, the dash design, center console design. You know, overall, it's very plain, very simple, but it works. I mean, the centerpiece has to be this infotainment screen, I know, but everything else in here, you know, I'm surprised. There's not a whole lot of, like, say, aluminum trim or piano black pieces. You know, what a lot of people or manufacturers do to kind of jazz up their interior. Just a few simple buttons, nothing complicated. Underneath the infotainment screen, you have some buttons for your media, right? Knobs for your radio and tuning. And underneath that, you have a very simple climate control. I mean, just the essentials. And that's honestly all you need. Like I said before, when you're driving a car like this, you don't really want to fumble around too much with the buttons, right? You just want to enjoy the drive for the most part. So now let me test out acceleration again with this paddle shifters and with race mode on. Ooh. Oh, jeez. Wow. Wow. Remember before when I tested acceleration and I'm like, it was okay, but I thought it would be faster? Yeah, much faster. Much faster. Wow. Right, first of all, if you just stomp it in second, the wheels are going to spin, right? Probably because it's cold out and these summer tires aren't as sticky as they should be, but yeah, you will. You will spin the tires. And once you get going, there's so much grip and so much thrust forward. Yeah, that was really fun. And this 8-speed, remember I was going to tell you how it was under full acceleration. Every time it shifts, you get pushed back like this, right? See, as you can see right now, I'm taking a large bend and this Veloster N feels very planted. Okay, so you may be wondering if you should look at a Veloster N or a Civic Type R, and that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. Now the Civic Type R is a very fun car. In fact, in my opinion, that may be the funnest car I've ever tested. And I've tested a few, a 2019 and 2020, and 2020 was slightly revised. I love the Civic Type R. And I gotta say, it does so many things well, and it does do a lot of things better than this Veloster N. However, with that said, it's not all in the Type R's favor. There are some things that this Veloster N does a whole lot better too. So as for like daily practicality in terms of space, cargo room, the Civic Type R wins hands down. Hands down, it is much bigger, right? But if you look at, say, something like looks, which is subjective, a lot of people think the Civic Type R is too overbearing, and they just can't be caught driving a Type R as a daily car or even as a weekend car. Where the Veloster N, I think a lot of people will argue that this looks better. It has a more traditional hatchback look, less aggressive, although it's still very polarizing, right? So, kind of a toss-up, but you could kind of give the win to the Veloster N in terms of looks. Now, in terms of interior quality and infotainment system, the Veloster N wins hands down. This infotainment system is light years better than what you find in the Civic Type R, which is very dated and low resolution, and it just doesn't work very well. And everything else about the Type R is okay. It definitely feels more dated than what you find in here, even though this doesn't have a whole lot of jazz, right? Doesn't have a whole lot of red like the Type R. It still looks better and functions better in my opinion. Also, the gauge cluster inside here looks a lot better. Looks more modern. This screen is a lot more useful. You can see a lot more information. Everything you want to know about this Veloster N comes up in that little screen, right? So, gotta give this to the Veloster N too. Now, I mentioned about the Type R. The seats in the Type R to me is more comfortable, more supportive, and I like the seats better. Although these seats isn't bad at all. I guess it just depends on your body type, but these seats definitely look better. And I love the illuminated N, which definitely adds a little pop. So I think the seats in the Type R is a little bit better, but just only slightly. Now, when it comes to acceleration, yes, the Type R definitely has a little bit more power. It has that beautiful 6-speed transmission, which I love. But I gotta say, with this dual clutch transmission, this is gonna be hard to beat, especially if you do plan on tracking the car. Also, what's a little better is this race mode. So yes, it's a small little thing, but you press it, you press this flag, and everything turns on automatically. Engine tuning, most aggressive. Steering, most aggressive. Exhaust, most aggressive, right? Suspension, most aggressive. Everything gets tuned right away for you, and it really transforms the ride. And when you don't want all that, you go back into normal mode, and everything just kind of quiets down, and this Veloster N just drives more like a regular Veloster or just a regular hatchback. So this setup is definitely better than the Type R. The Type R does have like Sport and Sport Plus, but I really couldn't tell the difference because in normal mode, it still was that aggressive all the time. So this definitely is also better in the Veloster N. As for fun, I can't really rate that because this is not a 6-speed manual. Until I test out a 6-speed Veloster N, I can't really compare because I think that Type R is way, way, way enjoyable. It's loads of fun. That's why it's one of my favorite cars of all time. And I think this is close to that level, but I'm not banging my own gears, which I think, you know, is half the fun. So I have to test it out later. So I can't really comment on fun just yet. Yeah, if you do have to go over any bumps, it does definitely feel a lot bumpier in here with this aggressive suspension settings. As I'm coming to a stop, the brakes feel good too. I mentioned about the upgrade brakes. Well, they're not too aggressive, so around town, they're still pretty good. You know, the pedal isn't too stiff. It still has a good feel. And overall, the Veloster comes to a stop really, really quickly when you want it to. Next up, let me talk about pricing and give you my final thoughts on this brand new Veloster N. As for pricing, the Veloster N starts around $32,250. If you want the new dual clutch transmission, that's additional $1,500. There are no additional optional packages, just a few accessories that's available. To conclude, the 2021 Hyundai Veloster N has been upgraded in a big way. The performance package previously optional is now standard, which means the additional power under the hood, the larger brakes, the summer tires, the active exhaust, the electronic limited slip differential, among other things, are all included now for no charge. The Veloster N drives great around town and very, very sporty and fun in race mode, and has more space on the inside than you think. And lastly, the Veloster N also costs thousands less than the nearest competitor, the CIVIC Type R. The bad includes a weird 3-door setup, the bottom cushion being a bit too aggressive for my taste. The new dual clutch transmission, although very fast and smooth, isn't nearly as fun as the 6-speed manual. And lastly, the Veloster N doesn't look or feel as raw as the CIVIC Type R. I'm giving the brand new 2021 Veloster N a score of 104. To see where it ranks, check out driversonlyrankings.com. Thanks for watching, hit the like and subscribe to the channel, and check out these other videos.